the Empower Hour. I'm Al Kumar.
And I'm Hanifa.
And we're your hosts each and every Wednesday from 2 to 3 p.m. where we come to you with impactful topics of discussion that affect our everyday lives. Today will be no different. As you know, if you tune in with us each and every week, we come to you with something different. And in the studio, we have with us today Brother Taalib Saber. And he is here with, he's an attorney with the Black Lawyers for Justice.
Yes.
And he is here to share some valuable information with us on how we should be handling ourselves when confronted by police officers. How you been?
Working.
I know when you came in, you were like head down. You were doing. I was like, "Well, excuse me, sorry to bother you, but we got a show to do."
Oh, no.
Well, thanks for coming on to the Empower Hour. We welcome you.
Thank you for having me.
This is our first time having you.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. I feel so loved.
Oh. All right. Tell us a little bit about who you are, and wait a minute. I'm sorry.
No, do we want to get this thing out the way before she leaves?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
So what we're going to do for a minute, though, we do have something very special for one of our engineers. So we're going to grab her up, and before we get started and finding out about Brother Taalib,
Yes.
we're going to bring her in real briefly, and just we wanted to do something special.
Surprises, okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is a surprise. Chris Murray, can you come here
Come
for a quick
on,
second?
over here. Come on, camera. Yeah. So if you guys can see Chris.
Come this way, Chris.
Oh, okay.
This is Chris Murray family, and you may know her if you're familiar with Everlasting Life and you follow Everlasting Life page or some of the stuff the owner, Dr. Baruch, does. Him and Chris works closely together. She also engineers our program, does an exceptional job, along with, she's just one of those people that's like, sure, what you need, I got it. You know what I'm saying? And by the time she's done, it's more fabulous than you could have ever thought yourself. So Hanifa and I thought it would be a good idea to thank you on air for all that you do. Yes, and and I know your birthday was recently. So we wanted to give you, because you work so hard and so diligently, so we wanted to give you a free massage from us. So thank you so much, Chris.
Thank you, guys.
Oh, we appreciate you.
Oh,
There you
So
go.
this is the magic behind the scenes.
Yes, and we just wanted to make sure we honored her and thanked her because Chris is really patient. But sometimes we are over like 30 minutes, and she just sits there quietly with Baruch in her arms and just patiently waits. She's never gotten like fussy with us or anything, and so we really truly appreciate you because we know you don't have to do it.
Thank
Right.
you so
Yeah.
much. You guys always are talking about wonderful things. I never want to cut you off, so it's not me, it's your wonderful show. So
Thank you.
guys so
All right,
much.
Chris,
All right,
thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, back to the program.
Yes.
Okay, so Brother Taalib,
Yes.
tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
Sure. So I'm a attorney. Of course, I practice civil rights, human rights, personal injury, and education law. And I'm also a filmmaker. So I do documentaries based on telling our story just as a people. And that has taken me to several countries in Africa to document certain, just like the connectivity of us as a people all over the world. And a staunch African activist. So I have a couple of organizations, one here in DC and then another one in Baltimore, where we do some work on the ground providing the basics of food, clothing, and shelter for our people. So in a nutshell, that's what I do.
Beautiful work. Thank you so much for working so diligently on behalf of our people too. Okay, so police confrontations. We had Malik Zulu Shabazz scheduled this week. However, he stays so busy.
Yeah.
He was in the courtroom and he couldn't get through, but he brought his he in his place, stepped up in his place, his brother Taalib. So
1 minute. Can you tell up your mic? It's on. Okay, so they need you to speak into the mic because
Okay.
we can't hear you that well.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right.
Go ahead.
I'm good now?
Oh yeah. I heard you. Sorry. Go ahead.
So, police confrontations.
Yes.
What advice do you give your own clients?
For the most part, because the majority of my clients clearly are black. So for the most part, I always tackle it from a position of being in war. So it's the duality of being an attorney, but also just being cognizant of your surroundings and your environment. So at the end of the day, the quest or the mission is to make it home, right? So, and understanding that if you are engaged in this warfare, then there are certain things that you should and shouldn't do. So when I speak to my clients just about, and even in my other organizations, when I speak to people just about how to encounter and how to engage with police, you do it from the perspective of, okay, if they are stopping you on the street, first thing that you want to ask them is, are you free to leave? Because that kind of invokes Miranda and the custody issue. Because if they start to question you thereafter, then you know that you've been, and you cannot leave, then you've been detained. So then you want to ask for a lawyer. But police cannot just stop you on the street. Or they can, rather, but you don't have to stay there. Like, if they don't suspect you of committing a crime, or they saw you engaged in a crime, then you're free to leave.
What about the request to search a vehicle?
Right.
So I would never, I think about it like this. If an officer has to ask you to search the vehicle, then that means that he doesn't have a basis to search the vehicle. Because you're talking about these rogue officers, they'll just come in and just search your stuff if they have probable cause to do it. But if they don't, then that's when they will ask you, oh, you don't have anything in your car, do you? Or you wouldn't mind us looking in this vehicle because you don't have nothing, right? These are the classic lines that they use in order to get access to searching your vehicle. But the reason that you don't want them to do that is because they can also plant stuff.
Right.
So if they're searching your vehicle and you know that you don't have anything in your vehicle, you're the only one that drives it, you're the only one that's been in it, and all of a sudden they find a small baggie of something in there.
Right.
That can be something that they planted. I think in Alabama, and it may have also been in Baltimore, some cases recently came out where officers were doing that. So that's one of the reasons why you definitely do not want to consent to a search. And it hurts on the back end as attorneys because it makes us do more work on the other side trying to get all of that stuff suppressed. Because if you already consented to the search, then it kind of it hems us up. Because if you didn't consent, then we can argue that you did not consent to this search. It was an illegal search.
Right.
But if you consent to it, then it's like, well, we can only hope and pray that so things
so your
can
case
change.
becomes stronger when you don't consent.
Yes.
Got you.
Yes.
Now, you mentioned like if there is no basis for a search. Now, give me an example of what a basis for a search would be.
Okay. So, for instance, say if you're driving down the road, right, and you have some type of illegal turn that you make. Okay. So you stop by the officer and he says you've been speeding or you've been doing all these things. You roll down the window and say there's a smell, of some type of drug usage going on in the vehicle. That gives them probable cause to search. Also, if there is, say, an open bottle, because sometimes we drive with like open bottles in the car, and that may give them a basis to search, depending on what that is. And then there's this thing in the law called plain view. So if an officer sees any contraband in plain view, and that means that they don't need a warrant or anything to get it, they can actually just start searching for more evidence for that particular crime. So for instance, if there's a gun in the car, then the officers can search all the components of the vehicle in which may house anything that's attached or affiliated with the gun. So those are some examples.
Now I saw an example recently online, a video where the guy was recording himself in his vehicle, and the police officer said he looked nervous, and that was their reason for wanting him to step out of the car, put him in handcuffs, and search the car. Is that probable cause?
No, nervousness is not probable cause, because if that's the case, then you can arrest everybody that's in the United States for the most part when they're engaging with police officers, because you'll be nervous.
I should say that he mentioned he did have a gun. He was licensed to carry. he did tell them that.
Mhm.
And after he told them that,
Mhm.
they said he looked nervous.
Nah, if he has a license to carry a gun, then that's perfectly legal. He hasn't done anything illegal.
Right.
You know, being nervous is not. These are just words or phrases that are used for the officers to attempt to write out their statement of probable cause to justify the arrest. Because at the end of the day, the officers may be thinking from the perspective of going to trial. If I have to take this to court, then I need to make sure I document how we can win in court or how it will be justified in court. So the nervousness, I mean, this is a PG show, but it's not nah.
Should you just explain, okay, so WA, right? So that's a tactic right there where you just explain they're thinking already. They're thinking far ahead as far as court.
Right.
Just in case this go to court, I need to make sure, and these are people who are in this field, working this every day. So they're thinking way ahead. Should we be thinking like that as well?
Absolutely, absolutely. The fact that there was a quote that I came across that said something to the effect of, so long as you're black, your existence is like a weapon and it's a threat. So us as a people, we need to be able to understand and understand that and be thinking 10 times farther down the road than that. You know, so when you engage with a police officer, or if you're stopped by a cop, you know, you should already be thinking, okay, one, how can I make it home? Two, if anything were to occur, how can I protect myself in case that we go to trial or things of the kind? So you're engaging with cops, they pull you over, you engage with them, you know, like you would engage with anybody else. The hostility and all these things, sometimes we have a tendency to say, oh, well, I know my rights and you can't be doing this, da-da-da-da-da.
Definitely want to get into that.
Yeah. So, but you know, you just want to be aware of the position and where you are and the conditions, and then the fact that they have a weapon, and more often than not, you don't. And then you're not possessed unless you have this spirit that, you know, like a Toussaint L'Ouverture or Nat Turner, where you're just like, okay, I'm gonna go out today.
Right.
And then yeah, you can do that. But if you don't,
Those people
have
are in the
that-
minority.
Right, exactly. But if you're not moving in that spirit or that air, then you have to understand that you're outmanned right now.
Yeah.
So you won't have to fight it on the back end.
Yeah.
Which is the key you said in the beginning. Your focus is it's to get home. The goal is to get home.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. But I want to go back to the car versus the street. What is the difference in? Is there a difference in the way the laws that the police have to abide while you're in a vehicle versus if you're walking down the street?
Yes. So with a vehicle, there are a couple of. So the Fourth Amendment says that there shall be no searches or seizures without a warrant for probable cause, essentially. There are a couple of exceptions that were carved out of that warrant requirement, one of them being an automobile exception. Their justification for that exception is that the automobile is something that's going to leave. It may go. So
Okay.
you don't need, by the time you go down to the court and you get the warrant, in order to search the automobile, it's going to be gone. So there's an exception to that to say if you find probable cause in the vehicle or, you know, crime being committed, then you can search the vehicle without a warrant. In contradiction to being in your house where you always need a warrant, unless you hear somebody screaming inside or, you know, something like that.
Right.
But so with the automobile exception, different rules apply. Also, you have your license to drive on the road. So that also is a distinction because you're getting permission essentially to drive on the road as opposed to just walking down the street. You know, so there are laws that protect you walking down the street. Now there was a recent case, Pachaco v. State, I believe, something like that, where it was just ruled in August of this year that marijuana odor on a person is not enough to stop them and arrest them. So that is a tremendous win for defense attorneys and for our people, because officers will always use the fact that I smell marijuana and I can arrest you based on that smell because it was illegal. But you know, Maryland has decriminalized marijuana. So if it's less than 10 grams, you can't smell more than 10 grams on a person, you know. But whereas before they would use that as a basis to arrest. So there are more laws that protect you as you're walking as a pedestrian down the street as opposed to being in a vehicle.
Okay, so it's the same applies. If police walk up to you while you walking down the street and say, "Hey, you, come here. Let me check you." What?
No, I would act like I don't hear them. Now we'll keep walking. Well, you could be 50 people around me. You could be, I don't know who you is. And that doesn't, I don't have to stop just because you say, let me check you. Like, what
Okay.
basis do you have to say that? This
Okay.
isn't, not, well, I was about to say this isn't Nazi Germany, but.
Concentration camp
Exactly.
zone,
But
right on those
can't say
borders.
that. But,
Yeah.
he has to have a basis to do that. Like, a
Okay.
legal basis to do it.
Okay.
That's not enough.
Now, I know a lot of times the cops will claim that there had been a crime in the area.
Uh-huh.
They're looking for somebody,
Uh-huh.
and he fits the description, he or
Uh-huh.
she,
Mhm.
and that is a reason why they stopped you.
Yeah.
But,
You get reading probable cause statements. You see a lot of that. There was one case because I also work. I represent people when they first get incarcerated or locked up. For their bail reviews. In the probable cause statement, there was one particular case that I had where it was two young brothers had a backpack on. Both of them had backpacks, and they were walking in their own parking lot or something like that. The police officers wrote in the statement that they looked suspicious because they had backpacks on, walking in cars, and there was between cars, and there was a recent break-in and all these type of things. Right? This does not rise to the level of detaining a person. You can inquire, you can ask
Right.
questions.
right.
Now, if the person wants to answer you or not, there's a little different, but you can ask questions as an officer, but that does not give you enough basis as opposed to say you saw those two same people with tools in their hands
Right.
that looked like they were going to open locks and pop locks and those type of things.
Right.
So, they use these words and this language in these scenarios to be able to detain our people, but it is essentially an illegal detainment because there's no basis, that is no concrete evidence that you can show that this person is in the process of committing a crime.
Okay. If you're just joining us, this is the Empower Hour. We are here interviewing Taalib Saber. He's an attorney, activist, and filmmaker, and he's talking to us about the proper protocols we should be conducting when being confronted by police. What are some simple solutions that most of us don't take advantage of?
Simple solutions. A lot of times we put ourselves in a trick bag by doing things like overtly. So prior to this law, one of the things that I would always reference is the fact that smoking marijuana in your vehicle is illegal, right? So and
Even,
it gives
even in
them,
states where it's legal?
well, smoking in the car. So
Oh.
if it's so let's take DC for
I
instance.
didn't know that.
Yeah,
Okay.
if DC for instance. So DC is legal to smoke in your house and to grow, in your house per a certain
A
amount.
certain amount.
But that doesn't make it legal to walk down the street smoking a joint.
Right,
You know what I mean?
okay.
So
okay.
so they can, that still gives a bit of basis for a stop.
Okay.
But some practical things would be not doing anything to get you caught up in this particular system. So that would be understanding the law, the rights that you have. As it pertains to some basic stuff like maybe assaults or breaking and entering, these type of things. Don't do anything that would get you caught up in the system like that. But then also understanding that finding out lawyers. Getting a lawyer on your team. I know a lot of people believe that lawyers cost so much money to retain, but there are other avenues in which you can go to. I always am a proponent of going to some of the clinics. In this particular area, you got Howard, you got University of Maryland, College Park, you have American, Georgetown. Some of these clinics provide free services and free representation. You have organizations, the ACLU would, when it comes to civil rights type things. You have other organizations that you can rely on to get you assistance. But then also being just abreast of the law, because the law is ever changing and always growing. So making yourself aware of what's going on.
What's the best way to do that, to stay abreast of the laws?
So in Maryland, there is a website called people-law.org, which is the library, the Maryland Library for all types of laws. The Maryland General Assembly, their website, will tell you all the laws that are being passed. A lot of things happen in society that are red herrings that distract you from laws that are being passed. So being abreast on that, even if you can, going down to Annapolis And in DC, whatever the council, going to the city council and seeing and sitting in on these hearings to know exactly what's going on, what laws are being passed, and these type of things. The ACLU has a card, like a Know Your Rights type card
Yeah,
that you
I've
can print
seen
off
Yeah, that's
online.
what. Okay.
Small
You know,
pocket.
the pocket
That's what I
cards.
was
So
thinking
having
of.
those online, we have those as well as an organization.
Okay.
But those are some things that you can use to stay abreast.
Is there any like that you know of radio shows or blogs or podcasts or
That
things
talk
like
about
that YouTube channels that
Mhm.
kind of go over some basics of laws
Well,
that people can tune into?
yeah, well, my channel, the
Okay.
Saber Firm does. You
Let's
know,
get
we,
it. What is it?
the Saber Firm.
Spell
It's
that.
on YouTube. TheSaberFirm on YouTube. It's a channel, and I give like legal tips. I'm also doing an online class. I'm in the process of writing an online curriculum for a class that will teach just this,
Cool.
like how to legally survive while Black in America. Is how
Yeah,
it's
because I
titled.
think
Yeah.
that's a missing component that
Mhm.
we have. You know,
Mhm.
like what you just said about driving, and well, I didn't know that. I didn't know that
Yeah,
was
that
not the
part.
law.
That, yeah,
Yeah.
that
And
you
I'm
can
sure-
smoke in your vehicle.
Right.
Yeah, marijuana.
And I'm sure I'm not the only one who are ignorant to a lot of these laws out here that if we only knew, we
Mhm.
would be able to better navigate.
And
Go ahead.
oh no, and that's one of the reasons why we have through the organization in DC that I have, the Movement for Black Power. We do like these monthly Know Your Rights sessions, so you can come in and we'll talk about the amendments. We won't just focus on what we deem as the criminal laws, which is the Fourth, Fifth, and Sixth Amendments, but we'll talk about stuff like gun rights, you know, housing laws. I sit on the committee for social justice with the Washington Bar Association, and we're doing a event on October 9th that deals with gentrification and housing and how to keep your house and, you know, certain aspects that they use, tactics that they use to force you out of your house and these type of things. But yeah, there are ongoing things that go on in the city. Our organization, in my individual capacity, we do. It's just about seeking it out and being out there so people know how to find us.
So I have the other thing I wanted. What about cursing at the police? So the police come to me. I'm annoyed. You're making me late for work. You know, I left out early this day and I was on time and here you come.
Right.
So I start cursing and calling you names.
So legally you're protected.
Okay.
Do I want to say intellectually? Or just that might not be the smartest thing to do, because then they're gonna write in fervent movements and that you were hostile and they were in fear of their life, you know, and as you're getting riled up and then you're already Black, so they're gonna look at you as a threat and say, okay, and then that's when they're gonna yank you out the car, toss you home, and do all these things,
Okay.
and then say that they were justified because of your behavior, and they felt that you were a threat.
Yeah, and it's a lot of that
Yes.
going on. And then you know what? Another thing I noticed too, a lot of us cheer on those individuals who, when we hear about, I cussed them out, and then, you know, get them. I'm like, well, wait a minute, pause.
Exactly.
That might not be so smart.
I think it's because we understand the role of the police historically. You know, they start off as slave catchers, and then they, you know, protect property and all these things.
Right.
So I think because of the enmity between the Black community and the police in general, anytime that you see someone who is going in on the cops or, you know, just ripping them anew and all these things, you get excited because it's like, oh, finally, we as an oppressed people are finally winning in some capacity.
True.
Even though it may be just like a paper win, if you even want to call it that, you know, because the police would just go away. In some cases, they would escalate to actually doing things even worse. But that goes back to having a warlike mentality, because in war, if you know that you are undermanned and underarmed, then you're not going to go to a different country, go up to their military and curse them out and just say all these things, and you don't have any type of militia behind you or any weapons behind you. So why do it here in this instance?
Right. You got to always stay in the form of we are at war.
Exactly.
I think. And if we understand that,
Mhm.
that you're behind enemy lines
Sure.
right now, and they have a lot more power in that minute and circumstance than you do,
Exactly.
I think you'll be more likely to make more intelligent decisions.
Exactly.
But that's just me.
How much of what when we talk about police interaction
Mhm.
with black people, because I'll see the comments and the discourse that happens around these particular incidents, and I can't help to notice that there's like a lot of respectability politics involved.
Mhm.
And how can we teach our young people,
Mhm.
you know, because 2021,
Right.
how to interact with the police without respectability politics being involved?
Mhm.
Because it's more like, well, if you dress this way,
Nah.
they're gonna treat you this way. How do we have the conversation without stripping them of their individual identity?
I love it. I think that one, it's important to give them context.
Okay.
That's one of the things that my professor Mary Wright down in law school taught me. Is just always putting things in this context.
Mm-hmm.
So, for the youth, I think that it's important, one, that they know who they are,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and where they come from, and just have those type of knowledge of self. But then also showing them images of, oh, you have to dress a certain way. Okay, well, back in the 50s, the 40s, and the 30s, when they were lynching us,
Correct.
they weren't
wore
lynching
suits.
us with,
Yes.
you know, we had suits on.
Mhm.
So the dress, no. The hair, no. All of these are excuses.
Yes, they are.
To really get at the fact that they don't like you because of inherently who you are, you know. So being able to teach the youth that, okay, you want to, again, make it home, and you can still have a conversation with the officers in a way that is respectable, but not from a submissive or, what's the word I want to use? Not from a perspective of, like, you're a second-class citizen.
Gotcha.
You know, it's not, you don't, you aren't a second-class citizen just because you tell you hand over the ID to the officer. You're not a second-class citizen or less than a man because you may comply to certain orders that he has. What that does make you is very smart and intelligent as a warrior, because you know that you're behind enemy lines, like you said, and that you're outmanned and underarmed. So you
It's
know you're not
strategy.
absolutely. That's exactly what it is. And teaching the children that, teaching the youth, teaching all our people that it's strategy. And at the end of the day, again, it's about you making it back home.
Right.
And whatever you need to do to make it back home, you do that. And then you from there, you can go, if you want to do civil suits, you can
Yeah.
do that. Even if you want to take it to its extreme on some revolutionary measures, that still gives you an opportunity to go back home and strategize about it.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So-
What about cameras? Is it okay to pull a camera out and
Film
start
cops?
recording? Yeah.
Yeah, so you can film the cops. The thing is that you just have to make sure that you're at a reasonable distance, a way that you don't interfere.
Okay.
So we're not. So say you're arresting her and I'm right here with it. Like that's not reasonable distance.
Don't worry,
It's
sis.
not-
I got you.
like
I got
that's
it all on camera.
that's a little too close.
Yes.
But if you at a reasonable distance, you let them know, all right, we're recording these things, then that's fine. And it also helps. Actually, the ACLU has they have an app, and I think some other institutions have apps where you can record on the app, because the police sometimes will try to take your phone and destroy it. So as soon as you record on this app, it sends it automatically to these places, and it houses it.
Beautiful.
You know, so
You said it's an app out there?
yes, and I know the ACLU has it, but I
Okay.
cannot think of the other institutions that have it. But if you Google something like recording the cops,
Okay.
app or something like that, then I'm sure it'll pop up.
Okay, good stuff. Real good stuff. The Fraternal Order of Police. They have 350,000 members, 2,100 chapters, and a national grand lodge. And they vote in blocks,
Yes.
right?
Uh-huh.
So my question is, here we are in the Trump administration.
Right.
Do you see a difference in how the tactics of the police now versus prior to the Trump administration?
With Obama,
Yeah.
I see. The police have always been the police, and I think nowadays it's just heightened because of the cameras that are around. But the tactics have always been there. As it relates to the Trump administration, I would say that they may take more liberties because they feel like the president is backing them. You on it? Because think about it, in Obama's administration, even what we may think of that, the DOJ at least had the facade that they were doing things to investigate us being lynched, killed, and all these things
Right.
by
And
the
the
cops.
DOJ is
Department of
Public
Justice.
Justice.
Yeah,
Okay.
Department of Justice. At least they would have, different press releases or statements about them actively doing stuff to reopen cases of civil rights and these things. The Trump administration comes in and rolls back all of that. So now it's kind of like that iron curtain is up between the Department of Justice or any type of governmental entity and the people, as far as getting their rights, allowing them to exercise their rights. So the distinction that I would say would probably be that, but just me as a lawyer, but also as an activist, historically there hasn't really been a difference.
Okay.
Like we still are oppressed. We still are getting shot down in the streets. We still have laws that are effectuated against our whole existence. So I don't really see a benefit at all that's happening now.
So to the people who say, maybe you can kind of go into expound on this or just go into depth, a little bit more depth on this, where it's not a race thing because they see black cops who are policing their community doing the same things to black bodies. So what do you say to those people? Can we still say it's a race thing, or is it just the function of the police? You kind of have to look at that. I don't know.
Well, I think that Dr. Francis Cress Wilson makes a point about the whole it being like an inferiority complex with the minority people. So the minority people in the planet are Europeans, and the majority people are people who are melanated, for the most part. As it relates to the institution of the police, I mean, it doesn't really matter who is. It's the institution within itself, but at the same time, this institution, when you look worldwide, is still ran by majority white. When you look at who's policing, so not just from a domestic point of view of the Fraternal Order of Police or the Maryland State Police, DC Metropolitan Police, those types of things. Think about it from the perspective of militaries, the United Nations, NATO.
Right.
Some of these organizations that go into other countries and occupy or exploit and oppress. Imperialism, essentially, is what's going on. And imperialism, for the most part, has been majority white. And under this existence that we're living in, that's what it is. Now, there's an argument that can be made about class, in that there's also a classism that's going on. So if you have money, then it will absolve you from that. But then again, we can go to the case with Oprah, and I think it was Sweden or something like that, when she went into the store.
Yes.
And I was like, I mean, she makes buku money, but
Right.
still gets discriminated against.
Right,
know.
right. Good stuff. If you guys have any questions for Attorney Taalib, give us a call here, 240-455-5934. Again, the number is 240-455-5934 for any questions. Do you see a lot of overt racism, like direct in your face, in your day-to-day
Well, I kind of just
activities?
experienced it this weekend.
Oh, wow.
But it's funny, within the past 3 years I've been experiencing more. But so we were taking my cousin back home because we had his mom, my auntie died, and we took him back home, and we were out in Jersey, and the cops pulled us over. So it was me, my pop, and him in the car, and my pop was driving, and he pulled us over, and he said, "Yeah, so we ran your license plate, and it's matching to a different vehicle." Now, mind you, this is a rental car, right? So I'm like, huh? So they asked him to get out the car. Now me, because I'm conditioned to pull out my bar card anyway, wherever I am, I had that out, and I was talking to the other officer, but I was asking what was the basis for the stop initially. Like, you didn't say that we were speeding. You didn't say that we made an illegal turn. What's the basis for running the license plate?
Right.
And then I took my mind back to that sister in Florida who was the state's attorney. They got stopped by the cops. And she asked the same question, like, why did you run my license plate?
Right.
He was like, oh, no, we automatically do it, and da-da-da-da-da. And then they were shook when they found out that she was the state's attorney, right?
Right.
And the same exact scenario happened. Like, once I told them I'm a lawyer that practices in Maryland, I don't understand the basis for the stop. And then eventually they just let us go, like, oh, it was a mistake, whatever. But again, It was two white officers. One who I was talking to pulled up on a car, trigger happy. You could tell. You know, so it's like, yeah.
Was this daytime?
This was daytime. This was daytime. Okay. So that experience was over for me. Outside, I would say I would come toward the end of a lot of stuff. So say, for instance, I may see some brothers sitting on the curb, you know, and white officers around them, but I don't know. I don't understand what happened, so I can't really say.
Right.
Or racism as it relates to the police, I haven't encountered a lot of overt, like on the scene overt after it. But normally, like if I'm reading reports or if I'm talking to my clients or talking to just the community at large, I hear a lot of stories. So yeah.
What about and the role that they play when it comes to these court cases that make it to the courtroom? Now, are they working in conjunction with the police officers a lot? Do you see that, or? So
Prince George's County is a different county in the sense that they have black judges, a lot of them. Yeah. But at the same time, they're still judges and holding a position. A lot of them may be elected. You may have people who are paying for their campaigns that come from the police. So like any other politician, you know, you would tend to look at who is sponsoring you or who is providing the funds for your campaign. My experience with the judges has been one of, I mean, lawyers talk to other lawyers, be it the state talking to the defense, defense talking to the state. We talk to judges as well. So you can see you know who certain judges are that may have a history of being racist, you know, or a history.
Usually of lawyers know.
Right, for the most part. There was there was a judge in Kentucky, Olu Stevens, I believe it is. They were coming after him because it's a black judge because he would dismiss the jury when he found out that majority of the jury was white. Oh, wow. You know, and that they didn't use, they were discriminating against for the most part.
Jury of your peers.
Right, exactly. And most of the defendants were black in Kentucky. Okay. Yeah. So most of the defendants were black. You know? So he came under fire for doing that. That's revolutionary. Yeah, and the thing about it is when you think about judges, and lawyers, you may have this connotation that we're all working in conjunction with each other. But then when you have a judge like that, sometimes you got to understand, like the system as it exists right now, yes, we're working outside the system to demolish it now, but as it exists, we still will need the members involved. So that way, if you have somebody who is progressive thinking, a black agenda and all these things going up against the state, it's a little different than you having somebody who's passive and pacifist and is just going to lay down for the court system, and also someone who looks like you, because if it's somebody who looks like you, they can be able to relate more than someone who doesn't. So there was a case that I did, my very first trial. I was co-counsel on a gang murder case in Baltimore. So the trial lasted a whole month, and the defendant was a year older than me. He basically read the same stuff I read, you know, and we would talk when we were in trial. We would talk because we sat beside. It was about 3 or 4 attorneys. So he and I would sit, you know, side by side, and we would just have conversations just about what's going on, the decisions that he made in life, and all these things, and just to see the fact that I look like him and he looks like me. So I can be able to advocate harder for him because I know what that struggle is like. I know what it's like to be in these situations and be stereotyped and discriminated against and all these things, as opposed to somebody who's just going to come in and plead you out.
I'm so glad you brought that up because I get a lot of those, I hear a lot of people, it may not be a lot, but some of us have this attitude where just destroy the system altogether. Why you in there? Why you in there in their system, being a judge or an attorney or a police officer? What is your take on that? I know you kind of just explained it.
Well, no,
but-
I think about the spook who sat by the door,
Mm.
and that movie and book, in the sense of we get the tools and the knowledge that is needed to be able to help combat that.
Mm-hmm.
So while we have while we have those on the revolutionaries on the outside banging against the system,
Mhm.
you have those on the inside doing the exact same thing.
Mhm.
So would we rather stay on the wayside and just have the system continue to run our people through and us not do anything? Or until we get the amount of people that we need, the cadre that we need to be able to fully have an assault on this? Do we have, my question would be, do we have the weapons to be able to do that? Are we
Right.
advanced in technology to be able to do a cyber hack to knock down the satellites and all these things? Do we have the knowledge of agricultural farming to sustain ourselves in this type of war? You know, if we decide to just back out like that, because those are the things that would be necessary in order to really fight and win
Right.
a war. You
Right.
know, so for us to, and while we're building that up, that capacity up, you have the people that will be able to rescue some of our political prisoners, for instance, that are in jail. I work with Brother Eddie Conway up in Baltimore,
Beautiful.
and you know, in the organization, people like that who are organizers. You know, other people who have laid down their lives or who have sacrificed their time and their freedom, who are currently incarcerated now.
Right.
You know, who just recently got out. Who was supposed to help them to get out to be able to continue to fight? You know. So this is the reason why I think that it should be all hands on deck and everybody has a role to play in this. But be it if you're a judge, if you're a lawyer, all these things. Now you personally may not want to be a lawyer or a judge. You might not want to have anything to do with it. Maybe you're moving with the spirit of Ogun and you need to work on the outside. And then you do that. But that doesn't mean that your brother or sister who is working within is less credible,
Yes.
you know, than you are.
Yes.
And then also you have to make an assessment of those that are for you too. So you have some same people that may be hollering about revolution, you know, and condemning those that are inside that are doing work, but aren't doing anything outside of talking, you know. So
Absolutely. And well said, and I'm so glad you said it in that way because I agree with you. It's we have a tendency, some of us, to want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. But then we don't have nothing to clean ourselves the next day.
Exactly.
You know, we don't have no bath water the next day, nor baby.
Right.
So it's like we have to think logically. You just gave a good explanation about the judge who was wiping away all of these juries. You know what I'm saying? Now imagine if he wasn't there to do that.
exactly.
You know what I'm saying? There'd be a lot more black men in jail, you know, if he wasn't there. I think of the sister that the judge, they just hauled off the court, literally dragged her out of the courtroom recently for the work she was doing on behalf of black people. From what I understand, juvenile court, she wouldn't allow the juveniles to come in her court hand shackling. They had a problem with her for that. And it was something else. Oh, they were she was not allowing juveniles to be charged as adults. She was doing away with all that. And so now here you have, you know, so they had a problem with that. So now they put her in jail. But imagine if people like her wasn't there to fight on our behalf.
Exactly, and that's why it's so needed. Like I think at this point in time in our EPCOP, there is no stone that should be left unturned. So if we got people that want to be lawyers and want to be judges in these things, then it's incumbent upon us to politicize them before they get to that role.
Yeah.
So it's not about condemning necessarily the position, but if you are able to catch a 15-year-old who has aspirations to be a lawyer or a judge, then you tell them about themselves, their culture and their history, where they come from. You tell them the duty that is owed to their people and the responsibility that they have toward their people. So that way when they get inside, now they don't lose focus of that, or they don't get swayed by the dollar to be bought and sold, you know.
Right.
So now you have somebody that's actually working within the system to get your people out, that can talk the language of your oppressor, but at the same time is working on the outside to funnel a lot of that stuff in, because you can have resources that are funneled back into the community that will help our overall goal of liberation.
Great stuff, great stuff. Speaking of laws and resources, are there any current laws or things in Congress moving in the direction of giving us some relief as it relates to this whole police. I know they were up on Capitol Hill, supposedly arguing it the other day.
Yeah.
With Al Sharpton. Al Sharpton and another politician went head to head over stuff ain't had nothing to do with police brutality at all.
It was personal.
It was very personal.
Yeah.
I mean, but are there laws, or do you see some pushback being done?
There was a bill that was, I don't know the status of it, but it was something that was talked about recently that protected the police more, and that was under the Obama administration, where it would make it illegal to, or make it a hate crime, I think it was, to attack a cop officer, or something to that effect.
Yeah, I remember something like that.
Yeah, the relief from police brutality would be in a form of coalitions that there are attorneys that are working on, or organizers that are working on lobbying for these type of things. Off the top of my head right now, I can't think of any bills that are currently enacted within Congress that helps to alleviate some of those police brutality issues that we may have right now.
That's unfortunate. What do you see in your practice the most, as far as cases are concerned? What do you see that's repetitive over and over on your desk, as far as the issues that is facing us when it comes to
police brutality?
Yeah.
I would say just illegal searches and seizures for the most part, like detaining people without giving them, articulating probable cause as to why you're detaining them, searching them illegally without probable cause, just because the person's in a particular area or looks a certain way, being stopped and searched in that regard. Now, they can pat you down if they think that you have a gun on you, or something like that, but I would say that is something that I often run across, just the illegality of the stops in the searches.
So harassment, basically.
Yeah. That's harassment of our people, and them guising it as being threatened or being scared of their lives, or just because these people are standing around. Even just the notion of having a loitering law, standing around aimlessly. How is that illegal?
That's a law?
Loitering. That's what loitering basically is. The signs, no loitering, those signs? That's what loitering is, for the most part.
Oh, I'm so ignorant.
Good
I just assumed, I thought that meant throwing trash.
That's littering.
Littering.
Oh my God. Okay.
Loitering is LOI.
Wow.
Don't worry, I did thought that a couple years ago too. It's all good, right?
So wait a minute. So just one person standing?
Well, it's a for the most part, it's like a group of people that they enact that type of law for, like a group of people standing around, and it looks like they don't have anything to do, and that's like the definition of loitering for the most part.
Oh.
Now, there are always attacks against that by organizations and us attorneys, because it's a vague law. Like, how do you define loitering? Like, how do you define someone not standing somewhere aimlessly?
Yeah.
They really just do it because they don't want people to stand outside their stores and stand in property and stuff like that, because they think it runs down the business and all these things, or they feel threatened by the people.
Interesting.
But that's just an example of a law. Like, there are thousands of laws on the books that, if you really broke it down and looked at it, it's like, why?
Right.
There's no purpose.
Right. Interesting stuff. Wow. Why isn't the thought more prevalent, you think, for us creating our own fraternal order of police, or policing our own communities, and you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So we won't have to depend so much on this judicial system.
So there are people that are working on that, being able to have that. I was talking to a brother from, what was it? I think PACA. Pan-African, I forget what it stands for, but he was telling me that they were setting up something similar to that, will be self-governance on the communities. But what happens is, because, and it goes back to throwing the baby out with the bathwater, because you've condemned the whole institution, you know, it's like, well, why even create something similar to that in which we condemn? You know, that's an aspect. And also the thought of, if you're looking at the masses of our people who may be workers, where are you going to find the time to do it? Like, where are you going to find the time? This is the reasoning that they use. Where are you going to find the time to sit down with other people to strategize about putting different people on the board to govern ourselves? Where's the money going to come from? Who's going to fund it? Am I going to give up my check? I can barely pay rent. You know, so I have to pay these people essentially, unless you have all volunteers. But is that sustainable to have all volunteers to be able to police, you know, our communities unjustly and like give it the angst that we need? But I think personally that we should be able to govern ourselves, and we should be able to have these institutions in place, because you don't need somebody else who has no knowledge of, or may have knowledge of who you are, but don't understand your day-to-day and just like what you're facing on the day-to-day. How are you gonna have somebody to come in and dictate to you how you should govern yourselves?
Yeah.
So I have a question here. One of our viewers asked, how long can an arrest be held against you? Not a conviction, just an arrest. And should that be basis for a job not hiring you? Just for an arrest.
Just for an arrest. The arrest can stay on your record for life. Yeah. Now that's why when you get arrested, you should get your stuff expunged, because if you got arrested, what people don't understand is, like the family said, that convictions is something that, like, if you like Maryland Judiciary Case Search, you can look it up and you can see it there. Arrest may be a thorough background check from an employer to pull that up, but it may not be something that the public per se could see. But you want all of that eradicated and erased, and being able to expunge that, because a lot of people also believe that once you get a conviction and they may have been told that it falls off after a certain amount of years. Like, no, you never want to rely on that. You want to go down and be proactive with that, and making sure that you expunge any convictions that you may have that there are certain classifications of them. Like felonies, you can't expunge. You got to get pardoned for that. But like small misdemeanor type of things, things that you were not convicted of, it may have been dismissed, no pros, or you were acquitted of it. Those things for certain, and if it's on the stat docket for more than 3 years, that just means it's inactive for more than 3 years, you can get all of those expunged.
What is the process
of expungement?
Yeah.
Okay. So what you do is, because I had actually practiced this, what you do is you file a petition with the court saying that you want these records expunged, these particular cases expunged. Normally what has to happen is you can't have any active cases. So say, for instance, if you have a court date in the coming months and you have a conviction for, what is it called? A peeing in public. A couple of years ago, 5 years ago, you can't get that expunged until you handle the case that you already have that's open, because they look at it from the perspective of everything has to be closed in order for you to get your records expunged. So you can't have any active cases in order to get your records expunged.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Even if it has nothing to do with
Yeah,
the
even if
first
it's separate. And then they also have this thing, which organizations like the NAACP are lobbying against. It's called a unit rule. So normally when you if you get arrested and convicted, you can get convicted, say if you were involved in let's say a carjacking, and there was a carjacking, there was possession of marijuana that was less than 10 grams, there was an open container in the car as well, and you got convicted and charged of all of that. If you have one of the charges, so the convictions, which would be the carjacking, that cannot be expunged, then the other ones can't be expunged. That's the unit rule. So what will have to happen, and that's why we're lobbying against it to get that fixed. But ordinarily, if you get stopped and convicted of open container, possession of marijuana less than a certain amount,
petty crimes.
Petty crimes, then you can get those expunged.
Oh,
Yeah.
But if you killed somebody,
that ain't coming off. Unless, like I said, unless you get pardoned by the governor. That's the only way it will come off.
I'm gonna go back to the whole police in the community thing. 'Cause you was discussing like what does that look like? Because there are people who are working.
Right.
Like what when we say that, it's easy to say it, but what is the vision of that? And my question just came like the first thing I thought was, how did the Black Panthers police their communities? And is that a blueprint that maybe perhaps we should be building off of? Not saying following, because we're in a different time, but kind of using it kind of as a guide and building on it. Is that something that we should be considering?
I agree. I mean, yes, we should consider that. I think, again, no stone should be left unturned. The Panthers laid down an excellent foundation as to how to do that, but then also modernizing it. Now, you can't walk around with guns like that, at least not here. So that was one aspect, but then there was a lot of things.
You can in an open carry state though.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. But one of the things that Fred Hampton actually spoke about, which is very true to this day, is there's no liberation without education. So if we want to set up these different entities and institutions, then we also have to, again, politicize these people as well.
Yeah.
So they will understand, all right, well, if you got a duty to govern the community, say if your shift is from 8 in the morning to 4 p.m., then there are certain things that you need to have at play to do that. You got to focus on this. You may not be able to engage with certain things or whatever. You have to be very strict and disciplined, to do it. Detroit, New Era Detroit, and the brother Zeke, I think his name is. You familiar? So they have like an excellent program with what they do up there and policing the communities and governing the communities and things of that nature. What it looks like to me is having individuals who are committed to just protecting the community. If any issue, and having something like a council of elders to have dispute resolutions, to go to, and then having those be enacted as the law within our community. So that means that you cannot go outside of that. Even if you disagree with the ruling, there could be a appeals process within our community, but you cannot at any point go outside of the community to say, oh, this person did this or this person did that. Yeah. And it has to be the final word, because that's how we respect it and that's how we appreciate it and stay true to it.
Beautiful
so something
stuff.
like that.
And I'm thinking, in order for that to work and be successful, there has to be trust built between each other. There has to be a core community and not just in words.
Exactly.
So it's like go both ways.
Yeah, and to the process, to the point, what is it, a susu, and having those type of things. I was building with a good brother of mine who happens to be Ethiopian, who was telling me about, I forget the term that they use, but it's the same thing. And I asked him once, I said, well, how do you guard against somebody taking the pot of money and, just dipping? He says, well, no, they don't do that. But if they do, then the entire community, not only here in the United States, but also back home and throughout the diaspora, will shun this person. And then they will hold them accountable. So they can't go anywhere without being held accountable for that. And I think that we as a people, because we've been so battered and bruised and oppressed, and this has been things intentionally set in place to divide us, not to mistrust each other, that has to be improved upon so that we can reach a place where we can be able to trust in institutions like this. And that's an ongoing process, so that's something that has to continually happen.
Right, and it's Sankofa in our journey. That's going back, because the Susu, all that's our history. That's how we used to do it.
Exactly.
And we got off course. We got about 5 minutes left in the program.
Oh, wow.
Right. I have a lot of friends who are Moors. Okay. And so they when
indigenous.
Yes, and then claiming the nationality. I mean,
sovereignty.
Sovereignty. Thank you. How do you feel about going without the Moors beating up on you today?
I know, right? That might happen regardless.
How do you feel about their ways and methods of handling things as it relates to going into the courtroom? Do you agree with them? Should that be an avenue more of us should take?
Well, I haven't had experience with or witnessed firsthand of the Moorish doctrine as it relates to sovereignty in this system. I haven't personally witnessed it, so I don't know if it works or not. I've heard from some people on both sides that, you know, oh, it worked for me, it didn't work for me. So I don't think I'm educated enough
Okay.
on their doctrine to
Okay.
be able to speak on it.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Okay, family. If you have any other questions, shoot them out. We got a few minutes left. If you're peeping through the looking glass of the future, what do you see? Do you see our situation as it relates to the whole system getting better as we go along, or are things falling apart more?
If I had to peek into the future,
Yeah.
based off of what I see today,
Yes.
I see more assimilation into the system, but by different means. So, like, I'll give the analogy of a grocery store. So you go into a grocery store, and you think that you have all these options to choose from on the shelves and all these things you leave, and then you may be content or satisfied with it. But in actuality, you're only choosing from what someone else has placed in the grocery store.
Good teacher.
So it's the same process I see foreshadowing with us until we get on the same page, culturally, socially, economically, and all these things. I feel like it's just going to be, we're going to go through the same thing 50 years from now or 60 years from now, but just in a different way, you know. So I think I was watching a roundtable discussion that Malcolm X had with, who was it? I cannot think of the names, but Wyatt T. Walker and some others. And he was talking about, in the 60s, he said, the signs may come down for us now, but there's no guarantee that that's going to help our children or our children's children. It will just be a different method that's used, but the same, you know, process.
Right.
And likewise, now it's the same thing. Like, we're going through the same exact thing, but just in a different way. Like, we still don't have the economic basis to be able to be independent. We have the notion of the $1 trillion that is spent as us, that we have collectively, but is that going to save Black-owned businesses? Is that going to building our own curriculum in education? Is it going to building hospitals? You know, owning land? Is it going toward that? And until we actually get on the same page as it relates to that, I don't see us coming up out of this. It has to. We have to have something that is like revolutionary.
Yeah.
People, groups of people that stand out and say, yo, we're not going to take any of this anymore and just do it completely different.
Right.
And we have to see a large amount of that in order to change this trajectory. But now you talk to the kids nowadays, and they're like, all right, well, we fine. We don't see any discrimination.
And that's what I was going to say, because that's the part that it's
Scary.
even if you're optimistic, you talk to the people who are following us,
Exactly.
these
Wow.
children, it is
Exactly.
very interesting. I mean, I that's what I go by, not even the adults.
Mm-hmm.
I go by the youth, and I listen, and I'm just like, we're in trouble.
Exactly.
We're in trouble because they have not been taught who they
Facts.
are,
Facts.
and we cannot shift the entire blame. We have failed them.
That's
Facts. Facts.
Their grandparents have also failed them, right?
Mhm.
And so when you talk in the beginning of the show, it's like, I have a 7-year-old son. I have 2 sons, and in my mind, my son, he wants to be everything right now. He's 7, but my job as a mother, I always think, is to, it doesn't matter what he wants to be. If he wants to go and try and be an astronaut, go do that. A lawyer, go do that. But I need to make sure that these things are instilled, so he
Yes.
don't go out there and just be any lawyer or
Right.
any astronaut.
Right.
But he needs to have Black consciousness in that
Facts.
role. And I
Facts.
think that's what's missing with the youth.
Mhm.
They have an idea of police brutality. They have an idea of the Black bodies that they find themselves residing in. They know what that means in the world, but they don't have an idea of what their roots are,
Yeah.
their greatness, their
Facts.
the glory
Facts.
from which they come from, and that is exactly how they operate. So they are the ones that are really trying to assimilate
Right.
into the system as much as possible, because for them there is nothing wrong with the system.
Exactly.
Absolutely nothing, and that's the issue right now. So even with those youth, that's what I was asking, how do we talk to them, you know, and still allow them to maintain their individuality? Because for them, police, for some of them, it's not the police, it's us. You know, that's how they see it, you know.
Exactly.
But my question to you is, how do Black police officers, knowing the system, knowing the beast, that is the system that controls the police, you know, how should Black people deal with Black officers? Are we to see them as our enemy because of that, or are we to see them as people who are just participating in the system to maybe gain a buck? I don't know.
I think that you have to, and eloquently stated just now, everything. But I think that you have to view it, the officers and people who work within the system on the individual basis, because all of them are different. So you have some that, you know, may be in it just the reason why I'm in being an attorney, you know, who actually are helping and calling out the blue line that's there, you know, and getting punished for it. Like, may lose. I know a sister who actually was an officer and was in the military for quite some time, and probably is one of the most Pan-African, you know, revolutionary people I've met, you know, just by her work alone. So I think that you have to judge the particular black officers on those bases, but also with the knowledge that they still are working within the system. So they may not. There will be some that just need to be gone. Like, those are the ones that Harriet would have shot. Like, that's just what it is. But then you do have some that's like, okay, well, man, you know, if I need, if we have, say, a protest or a demonstration that's going on, or if we are taking over a building, let's say, and a call comes into that district that, you know, these activists or these people are doing this and that, that officer might answer the call and be like, oh, I didn't hear it.
And they do it on the other side all the time.
Exactly.
All the time.
All the time.
I think about the South Carolina, where they say the police were nowhere to be found.
Yeah.
When that white woman got ran over by
The protesters.
they were protesting, and I forget where it was. But anyway, we completely ran out of time. But I want to get in. You have some books there.
Yes.
Yeah, Did you want to share with the audience?
So these are one of the things that I always do when I'm doing any type of interviews is I always bring books. One, I'm an avid reader. I love to read. But also I think it's important for us to fully understand where we come from, our history and knowledge, but also stay aware of everything that's going on. So not just things that's happening within our community as a people, but also what's going on with the enemy lines and staying abreast with that. So this is Cultural Genocide in the Black and African Studies Curriculum by Dr. Yosef Ben Yakinen, Dr. Ben.
Love Dr. Ben.
And then this one
I met
is...
him once.
Did you? I didn't get a chance to. I'm so mad. And this is African People in World History by Dr. John Henry Clark. So these are two master teachers of our people that I'm currently reading.
Okay.
And Dr.
good
Ben
stuff.
is thorough.
Oh yes. Oh yes.
Yes. I mean, he was in before he passed in the nursing home. We drove up to New York and
wow.
spent the afternoon with him. It was great. How can they find more information about you?
Yes. So I'm on all the social medias. So my name, Taalib, Taalib as in boy, last name Saber, Saber. That's on Facebook. On Instagram, excuse me, it's at my first name, Taalib _S. And on, what is that, Facebook? And Twitter, it's the same, Taalib Speaks. But I also have a investment company that we just recently started, excuse me and a good partner of mine went to law school together. So we're investing in different real estate. So we're gonna start in Baltimore and then in Georgia and Macon, where we're gonna be buying up property and changing it, excuse me, improving it and opening it to our people for housing aspects and those type of things. But also we're dealing in the health and wellness section too. So we got sea moss popping on there as well as bladder wrack that we sell, and that's Sundiata, you know, from the warrior in Mali. Sundiata Investments.com is there as well. I have my YouTube page, which is The Saber Firm. So it's my last name and then firm. And I think that's it.
Oh, you busy. You busy. I'm a consummate entrepreneur.
Yes, indeed.
Yes. Well, family, I know went a little over, but this discussion, I mean, you know, this is well worth the overtime, I think. We want to thank Brother Taalib for coming in and sharing your wisdom with us and your education. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You want to say anything?
I appreciate the conversation. It's a much needed conversation.
Yeah.
It needs to be a continual.
Yes.
You know, we need to, there's so many things we need to continue to discuss, and this is definitely one of them. And so we appreciate you for coming onto our platform and sharing with us.
Thank you.
Yes.
That's the
Hopefully
Queens
you
right
can
here.
come back and join us again.
Yes.
Absolutely, anytime.
Okay,
Yes.
cool. All right, family, until next week, take care of each other out there. Peace.
Peace.